By all accounts, Lindsay Musgrove was a kind and caring person who graduated with a biology degree from Quinnipiac University in 2012. 2 years later, she earned her nursing license and studied at Massachusetts General Hospital Institute of Health Professions. Lindsay dedicated her life to helping others as a labor and delivery nurse at Massachusetts General Hospital. Lindsay quickly established herself as a consummate caregiver, and her colleagues loved to work with her. Known for her attention to detail and compassion, Lindsay's patients requested her as their preferred nurse for future deliveries. Her ability to soothe nervous parents and guide them through labor was remarkable. In 2016, Lindsay married Patrick Clancy, a computer software engineer. Just 1 year after their marriage, Lindsay and Patrick welcomed their daughter Cora. Cora was a loving and caring older sister who dreamed of becoming a doctor and a mommy. Dawson, their second child born in 2019, was a bright and charismatic boy. His laughter and infectious smile lit up every room he entered. In 2022, Lindsay gave birth to Callan. Callan was a happy and easygoing child. He was often referred to as Happy Callan by his mom and dad. Lindsay, Patrick, and their children lived in a beautiful house in Duxbury, Massachusetts. The house, purchased for $500,000, had everything they could have asked for. Their backyard was adorned with a white picket fence and a playground, creating the perfect setting for an American dream home. To their friends and family, Lindsay and Patrick had what many would consider a perfect marriage. The couple rarely fought, and their unwavering affection for each other was evident in the way they exchanged "I love yous" several times a day. They were the epitome of a loving couple radiating happiness and contentment. Patrick was a loving and dedicated father to Cora, Dawson, and Callan. Their bond was unbreakable. He was always in the backyard, engaging in playful activities with his 3 children. There was nothing more important to Lindsay than Cora, Dawson, and Callan. She loved being a mother and believed that raising children was the most rewarding and fulfilling thing a person could do with their life. Pictures of her children filled the walls of her home, and she constantly shared images of them on social media. She would write posts expressing her gratitude and joy, such as, "I feel like the luckiest mama in the world, and so unbelievably thankful for this family and life." Those who knew Lindsay attested to her dedication as a mother, describing her as someone who would leave parties early to return home to her babies. She truly hated hearing them cry, even when sleep training them. Lindsay's commitment to her children was evident in every aspect of her relationship. After the birth of Cora and Dawson, Lindsay's emotions became overwhelming. The weight of motherhood proved to be a significant challenge for her, and she struggled to navigate the complicated waters of motherhood. However, she declared on Facebook that her experience with motherhood with Callan was going more smoothly, as she was focused on exercise, nutrition, and rest. She was taking proactive steps to address her emotional well-being. However, as time went on, Lindsay started to experience anxiety about returning to work after her maternity leave. The pressure of being a full-time mother and balancing her career became overwhelming for her. She sought solace in various forms of therapy, including visits to multiple psychs and being prescribed a range of medications. By September 2022, Lindsay's anxiety levels had reached an all-time high. In search of relief, she decided to seek further help. She went for an evaluation at the Women and Infant Center for Women's Behavioral Health in Providence. Unfortunately, she was not diagnosed with postpartum depression during this visit. On January 1, 2023, she confessed to her husband Patrick that she had thoughts of harming herself and her children. Alarmed and concerned, Lindsay to seek help and admitted herself to the McLean Hospital for mental health treatment. She would spend the next 5 days in the hospital, receiving the necessary care. When Lindsay was discharged from McLean Hospital, the doctors determined that the young woman posed no danger to herself or others. However, no one knew the true extent of her struggles. Throughout January, Lindsay appeared to be getting better. Her family went on several outings to museums and restaurants, and Lindsay herself expressed that she no longer had thoughts of harming herself. Even her mother noticed a change in her text messages, as her tone appeared more upbeat. However, no one knew that Lindsay was battling her own demons beneath the surface. On January 24, 2023, those demons finally took a terrible toll. On this day, Lindsay's true thoughts and feelings came to light in the most devastating manner. January 23, 2023, began as a regular day for the Clancy family. As the morning progressed, Lindsay took the children to the doctor for a checkup. Her daughter, Cora, was scheduled for a routine examination with her pediatrician. Upon their return home, Lindsay spent quality time with her children, enjoying an afternoon of play in the snow. Taking the opportunity to capture these moments, she snapped a few pictures and shared them with her husband, Patrick, and her mother. The happy scene painted a seemingly normal picture of family life. On that fateful day, Patrick was working from home in the basement. Around 4 p.m., after Lindsay and the children came inside from playing in the snow, she Googled "kids Miralax." She also used Apple Maps to calculate how long it would take for someone to drive to the 3V restaurant near Kingston. Lindsay also searched the CVS website called the CVS in Kingston and asked if they had children Miralax. She then texted Patrick in the basement office and said, "Any chance you want to do takeout from the 3V? I didn't cook anything. It's been a long day." Although 3V was a bit out of the way for Lindsay and Patrick to eat from, there were closer restaurants they had ordered from before. Patrick informed Lindsay that he agreed to check the menu and select what he wanted to eat. He chose the scallop and pork belly risotto, while Lindsay opted for the Mediterranean Power Bowl. At 5:10 p.m., Lindsay called the 3V to place the order and mentioned Patrick as the designated pickup person. At 5:15 p.m., Patrick left the home, and Lindsay sent him a text message as a reminder to pick up the children's medications at the CVS. CCTV footage showed that Patrick arrived at the CVS at 5:32 p.m. However, he did not receive an answer during his attempt to ask about the brand Lindsay preferred. 1 minute later, at 5:34 p.m., Lindsay finally returned Patrick's phone call, which lasted for 14 minutes. Although the conversation seemed normal, Patrick later shared that he sensed that Lindsay was in the midst of doing something while talking to him. It was chilly outside as Patrick arrived home at 6 p.m., after stopping to pick up dinner and medication at CVS. As Patrick pulled into his driveway and entered his home, he noticed an eerie silence that hung in the air. The usually bustling house was unusually quiet, and the absence of the family's sounds of his 3 children and wife, Lindsay, was unsettling. Panic began to settle in Patrick's mind as he searched for any signs of life in his home. Lindsay and his children, Cora, Dawson, and Callan, were nowhere to be found. His heart raced with worry as he called Lindsay's cell phone at 6:09 p.m., hoping to hear her voice on the other end of the line. Unfortunately, there was no response. With growing concern, Patrick made his way up the stairs to the master bedroom. The silence was deafening, and each step he took echoed through the empty house. As he approached the door, he noticed it was locked, which was even more unsettling as Lindsay had never locked herself in the bedroom before. Patrick turned the knob, but it wouldn't budge. He exerted more force, but the stubborn lock refused to give way. Desperate to find his wife, Patrick resorted to pounding on the door, hoping to elicit a response. All he received in return was silence. Frustrated but determined, Patrick continued to struggle with the locked bedroom door. After what seemed like an eternity, he managed to force it open, revealing a scene that would be etched in his memory forever. Blood stained the floor and windowsill, and a bloody knife lay ominously on Lindsay's bedside table. The sight sent a shiver down Patrick's spine as he immediately recognized something unspeakable had happened inside the room. Walking toward the bloody windowsill, Patrick peered outside and saw his wife, Lindsay, lying on the ground in the backyard, his heart pounding with fear. Patrick frantically dialed 911 as he ran down the stairs and outside to Lindsay. Patrick found Lindsay lying face up in the backyard, her body soaked in blood. Slashes were visible on both her neck and wrists. Lindsay was conscious, but barely responsive. Panic washed over Patrick as he desperately tried to make sense of the situation. "What have you done?" he asked, his voice trembling with fear. In an eerie and detached voice, Lindsay replied that she had attempted to take her own life and jumped out the window. As Patrick's mind raced, filled with confusion and concern for the welfare of their children, he had to ask the unthinkable. Where were the 3 young children? Lindsay coldly replied, "In the basement." Patrick remained outside with Lindsay until the police and paramedics arrived, staying on the phone with the 911 dispatcher the entire time. The dispatcher could hear the tension in Patrick's voice as he relayed the grim situation and stayed by his wife's side. The paramedics quickly arrived on the scene and began assessing Lindsay's condition. They worked tirelessly to stabilize her and provide any necessary medical attention. Meanwhile, Patrick's thoughts were consumed by the well-being of his children. With the paramedics preoccupied with Lindsay, Patrick decided to search for his children. While still on the phone with the 911 dispatcher, Patrick walked back into their home, his heart pounding with fear. He descended the staircase into the basement where Lindsay had said their children were. With every step, he called out, "Guys?" hoping that they would respond to him, but there was no response. As Patrick reached the bottom of the staircase, the atmosphere grew tense and foreboding. The silence was deafening, and a sense of dread filled the air. Suddenly, the dispatcher on the end of the line heard a scream as if someone or something was in agony. Upon entering the basement, Patrick discovered his 3 children, Cora, Callan, and Dawson, lying unconscious on the floor. Each child had an exercise band tightly wrapped around their neck. As panic set in, Patrick immediately called for help. Patrick begged his children to wake up and breathe, his voice filled with desperation. He screamed for the police officers upstairs, assisting his wife, Lindsay. In a matter of minutes, the officers descended the stairs and witnessed a horrific sight. 3 innocent children, unconscious and unresponsive, lay lifeless on the cold floor. In the midst of the chaos and turmoil, Patrick uttered the words, "She killed the kids," referring to his wife, Lindsay. With each word, his desperation turned to anguish as he realized the extent of his wife's unimaginable act. Cora, his 5-year-old daughter, and Dawson, his 3-year-old son, were pronounced dead at the scene. Baby Callan, just 7 months old, was still alive, but his injuries were severe. Despite the efforts of the medical team, the infant succumbed to his injuries several days later in the hospital, with his father by his side, holding him in his arms as he took his final breaths. The tragic events that unfolded in less than 20 minutes had shattered Patrick's world, leaving him grief-stricken and desperate for answers. Lindsay, in the meantime, was taken to Boston's Children's Hospital to be treated for the injuries she sustained when she jumped out of the window and fell 20 feet in an attempt to take her own life. She was charged with 3 counts of murder, 3 counts of strangulation or suffocation, and 3 counts of assault and battery with a dangerous weapon. Days after the horrific events unfolded, Patrick Clancy expressed his feelings on a GoFundMe page created for him and his family. Despite the unimaginable pain and shock, he displayed love and forgiveness for his wife. However, he admitted that the shock and pain of the entire ordeal were relentless, leaving his family in a state of profound grief. The GoFundMe campaign established to cover the expenses associated with Cora Dawson, and Callum's funeral received generous support from the public. However, many individuals expressed that they were effectively funding Lindsay's defense by contributing to the campaign. This statement sparked controversy and raised concerns about the potential misuse of funds. Lindsay's attorneys later clarified that their legal fees were not paid through the GoFundMe campaign. Instead, her parents were responsible for covering these expenses. Despite the controversy surrounding the GoFundMe campaign, it managed to raise over $1 million. However, as of this time, the campaign is no longer accepting donations as it reached its goal. During a brief hearing held on February 3, 2023, in Plymouth District Court, a judge granted a request by Lindsay's attorney for the police to waive security rules at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, where Lindsay was a patient. The request was made to allow the examination of Lindsay by a forensic psychiatrist to access her for symptoms of postpartum depression. Lindsay's attorneys argued that her self-inflicted injuries had left her movement extremely limited, and she posed no threat to anyone. Lindsay's attorney further contended that Lindsay was subject to a horrific overmedication of prescription drugs. Among the medications listed by her attorney were Klonopin, Valium, Ativan, Zoloft, amitriptyline, mirtazapine, Prozac, mood stabilizers such as Lamictal and Seroquel, as well as buspirone, hydroxyzine, and Ambien. She had been prescribed a total of 13 medications within 4 months for the treatment of mood disorders, anxiety, and psychosis. According to Lindsay's attorneys, one of the side effects of overmedication on these drugs was suicidal and homicidal intentions. The attorney believed that a thorough examination by a forensic psychiatrist was necessary to determine the extent of her symptoms and the potential risks associated with her medication regimen. The Plymouth County prosecutor painted a vivid picture of her actions, alleging that she acted with extreme atrocity and cruelty, challenging the defense's assertion that her postpartum mental condition and prescription medication played a role in her homicidal acts. During the court proceedings, Lindsay sat silently in a hospital room, watching intently through a monitor. As the details of this tragic case unfolded in court, a not guilty plea was entered on behalf of Lindsay. When Lindsay Clancy committed the heinous act of murdering her 3 children, she committed filicide, the deliberate act of killing one's offspring. According to Dr. Philip Resnick, a psychiatrist who specializes in the area of filicide, there are 5 primary reasons why a parent would commit filicide. One surprising motive behind filicide is a sense of altruism. In some cases, parents may feel that by ending their child's life, they are sparing them suffering or preventing a tragic future. This motive is difficult to understand and comprehend, as it flies in the face of natural parental instincts to protect and nurture. Another potential reason for filicide is acute psychosis. With mental health disorders like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, people may experience delusions or hallucinations that lead them to perceive their children as threats or sources of harm. In these cases, the person's perception of reality becomes distorted, and they may believe they are saving their child from harm. In some cases, parents may have second thoughts or regrets about having a child. They may harbor disappointment, frustration, or even hatred towards their children. This sentiment can escalate to the point where the parent feels compelled to take drastic measures to eliminate the child. Physical abuse can be a catalyst for filicide. When parents subject their children to severe or ongoing physical abuse, it can create a toxic environment where the child becomes the victim and the parent becomes the perpetrator. In the most severe cases, the parent may feel a sense of relief or release after physically harming their child, leading to the ultimate act of filicide. Filicide can also arise in the context of spousal revenge. In instances where one parent feels betrayed, abandoned, or abused by the other, they may turn their anger towards their child. By harming their child, they may seek revenge or exert control over their partner, demonstrating the depths of their despair and frustration. The shocking tragedy raised questions about the connection between postpartum depression, PPD, psychosis, and homicidal behavior. Lindsay's attorneys argued that a combination of postpartum psychosis and over-medication were to blame for her actions. After childbirth, the levels of hormones in a woman's body drop quickly, leading to chemical changes in the brain and mood swings. This natural process, known as the postpartum period, can cause feelings of overwhelm, loss of energy, intrusive thoughts of harming oneself or the baby, loss of sleep, and a variety of other physical and emotional challenges. However, postpartum psychosis is a far more severe and dangerous condition that affects the mother's sense of reality. This condition affects approximately 1 to 2 of every 1,000 deliveries and is characterized by a sudden and severe loss of sanity. Symptoms may include delusions, hallucinations, paranoia, rapid mood swings, and disorganized thinking. During the investigation into the murder of Lindsay Clancy's 3 children, a diary entry was discovered on her phone dated October 25, 2022. This journal entry, written months before the heinous crime, revealed distressing insights into her state of mind in the days leading up to the killings. In the diary entry, Lindsay expressed frustration and resentment towards her children, specifically Cora and Dawson. Lindsay wrote that sometimes she resented them because they prevented her from treating their infant son Callan like her first child. She expressed her discontentment when Cora and Dawson returned from preschool, stating that their bad blood seemed to rub off on her. According to Lindsay, she felt depressed, and her emotions were affecting her children. Additionally, the detectives discovered that just 4 days before the killings, Lindsay conducted a search on her phone that read, "Can you treat a sociopath?" She also looked up ways to kill on her mobile device. The revelation that Lindsay harbored resentment towards her children and sought information on how to carry out such a heinous crime was deeply disturbing. During an arraignment in October 2023, it was revealed during the arraignment that toxicology reports had revealed the presence of certain medications in Lindsay's system. The reports indicated that she had been prescribed antidepressants, antipsychotics, sedatives, and an anticonvulsant, all of which were found to have reached therapeutic levels. The prosecution's case focused on proving that Lindsay had premeditated the murders and carried out a deliberate act of violence. They argued that the presence of medication in her system played no role in her actions, as she had already made the decision to kill her children. Further, the timing and level of the medications further supported their theory that Lindsay had acted with a clear mind and without any impairment caused by medication. In 2024, Patrick Clancy completed the Boston Marathon in his children's names, raising funds for the Boston Children's Hospital. During this time, Lindsay, who is facing trial for the murder of her children, remains committed to her treatment at the Tewksbury Hospital. She is currently described as permanently paralyzed.